Let me tell you a story. One about a young child celebrating Christmas with no way to realize how huge an impact this day would have on the rest of their life. This child was a fan of Pokemon from the very beginning, starting off with receiving a Game Boy Color and a copy of Pokemon Red. While familiar with computer entertainment programs like Reader Rabbit, this Game Boy Color would be the first true video game console they own, and solidified their interest in this field of entertainment for the rest of their life. Fast forward across various Nintendo consoles, a Nintendo Powered subscription, and more. This child would eventually end up asking for two games in particular for Christmas: Monster Rancher Advance and Golden Sun. Sure enough, on that Christmas day, when they opened up the presents, there they were, in all their glory. When it was time to play Golden Sun, the game was popped into the GBA and greeted the child with the classic boot up jingle. Then, a glorious title screen with fantastic music. And then, their first taste into the true world of RPGs. In case it wasn't obvious yet, yes, this child was me. Up to this point, I've basically kept up with every release when it comes to Pokemon. From the mainline entries to a handful of spin-offs, I was well versed in the world of Pokemon. But as for your more traditional JRPG, well, that was still a bit of a foreign beast. I never really got interested in Final Fantasy at the time, and this was the first JRPG that really caught my eye. In fact, outside of Paper Mario, there aren't really any RPGs coming to mind that I played before this point, outside of the usual Pokemon release. Sadly, most of those childhood memories are lost to time, and I can only speculate on what caught my interest enough to make this game finally be the one. All I know for sure is most of what I knew about the game going in was from Nintendo Power, so there was probably something about the way they promoted it that caught my eye. Regardless, as my introduction not just to the game, but to RPGs as a whole, first impressions would be vital. And well, considering where I am today, I think those first impressions were successful. As I sat down and played through that dark and stormy night, the music, the ambience of the rain, and the effort that little GBA speaker put into the sounds of downpour and lightning, all this compelled me into the game right from the start. I could tell that I was finally going to get a taste of what JRPGs were all about. I could go on about the Golden Sun series for ages, but for now, how about we start from the beginning, like the literal beginning of the game. Before that though, I want to talk a little bit of why I'm making this video in the first place. So a couple months back, I made a video showcasing a fan project, we'll refer to it as, called Golden Sun QOL. In short, it took features from other fan projects, including my own, that I thought would be enjoyable in the original game. Honestly, it was mostly a filler project in my eyes that I didn't take too seriously nor expected anyone else to. But boy was I proven wrong, as it sparked way more attention than I could ever dream of. It ended up being the most popular video I've uploaded in the 14 years I've been doing stuff on YouTube. In terms of view, little to nothing holds up on my channel in comparison. But what's really shocking was the amount of engagement and conversation it sparked, with a huge variety of fellow fans of the series. At its peak, I was spending several hours a week just keeping up with all the comments in that one video. It was full of people expressing their nostalgia, excitement to see anyone give it attention, people curious about getting into the series as a whole, threads of discussion about how a proper remake could make it even better. Circling back to the topic at hand, one of the more divisive features I included was an alternate version that completely skipped the prologue. Many people love the option, while others seem a bit confused by the addition, wondering why anyone would want to skip this iconic part of the game in the first place. I'll admit, part of the reason for this editorial is to remove the assumption that I think that the prologue is purely bad. I got the feeling some people might think this just because I added an option to completely remove it. I think this intro makes it clear that it was perfect for someone like me the first time I played the game. It's just for me personally, it loses its purpose once you're already familiar with the game in terms of gameplay and story. It doesn't help that I've seen friends and fellow gaming peers fall off the game far too early because of how slow the burn is to get to the true heart and soul that makes Golden Sun stand out. And because of how deeply I can get into the pros and cons of this prologue, I thought it was worthy of being the first, but hopefully not last, Golden Sun theme editorial I make. In case it wasn't obvious, this editorial will have spoilers from Golden Sun, and I might need to go into Lost Age as well, depending on how deep we go. The games are too interconnected to avoid at least bringing up the latter, so we'll see how this goes. Secondly, I'm defining the prologue of this game as everything from the opening scene to the moment after we get our first Djinn. While arguably this game's slow burn goes on even further, I feel this definition of the prologue makes a good divide from a narrative standpoint and ends right when you're introduced to the class system that I feel makes this game so distinct in terms of gameplay. Let's begin by diving into what I feel is the strongest point in the prologue's favor. Golden Sun was built as an RPG for people who have never played RPGs. At least back 20 years ago when this game was first released. The genre has gone through so much evolution since then that there are some faults that would age this design and make other RPGs a more appealing starting point. But if there's anywhere you can still see this design in place, for better and for worse, it would be the prologue. You start off with very little, and the game takes its time, assuring that you are comfortable in your current environment before introducing new elements. I know that sounds weird because the game literally starts with you evacuating your hometown from a semi-natural disaster, but let us focus on this opening scene from a gameplay standpoint before we dive into how the narrative is anything besides small. You begin the game fleeing for your life in this town that is supposed to be your home, where you're supposed to be most safe, and yet between the dark tones the game starts on, and how large this place is compared to something like Pallet Town, it feels more like navigating a dungeon than a place of peace and tranquility. Granted, the conveniently falling boulders assure you stay on the intended path as you use the bare minimum in terms of movement, communication, and combat. All while the darker tones in this opening keep things exciting, despite their simplicity. To emphasize how basic we're talking, this opening area only has 2 battles. Well, going through and recording it was more like 3, but that's besides the point. Your only form of offense is very basic strikes with your weapon. However, the drama is cranked up to 11 to make up for it. Fleeing for your life, stopping to try to help your childhood friends, only for disaster to peak, just as you gain that glimmer of hope that everything will be alright. Just to add insult to injury, as you rally up your courage and determination to make one last ditch effort to save everyone. Those dreams are crushed as the eventual villains of this story curve stomp you effortlessly. The game is even kind enough to give you control in this battle, just to show you how powerless you are to change fate. Defeated, all you can do is watch the villains get away scot-free, as you and any hope you had to save everyone fades to black. This was definitely a drastic change of pace from your typical Pokemon opening. Looking back, I don't think there's too many RPGs that start off this strong. While the whole disaster hits your home village trope isn't exactly uncommon, usually you at least get a little time to get attached to the place before disaster spirals out of control. I can't say I can name a game where the moment after you confirm your name and the story starts, that disaster is already happening. Wouldn't be surprised if it exists elsewhere, but definitely not in my conscious awareness. Plus, I gotta give a moment to praise the use of the unwinnable boss fight trope. It respects your time, it doesn't let you get confused of if you're supposed to win or not, because, let's be real, you ain't living past turn 1. Plus, it's the perfect way to make use of the unique elements of the interaction a video game can provide to slam in your face just how bleak the situation is. It's the perfect starting point for a grand adventure, which makes it quite the shame that we still have 2/3 of the prologue to go. While the rest of the prologue has some merits, the pacing will be significantly slower going forward. We fast forward 3 years later, where Isaac, Garrett, and Jenna are studying synergy at the Ways of Alchemy. On their way to meet their mentor Kraden, they bump into the antagonist once more. After surprisingly being shown some mercy, we learn the duo has already spoken with Kraden, as they were trying to coax him to join their journey to the sacred mountain that our home resides on, Mount Elf, and go within his holy temple, known as Sol Sacum. They even mention details unknown to even Sol Sacum's closest guardians. This makes the duo very suspicious. as even the locals need special permission to access the temple. If these claims were true, the odds of them intruding on Solsecum, or worse, are very likely. However, in order to confirm if these claims had any merit, the party decides to sneak into Solsecum to see it with their own eyes. It is the heart of alchemy, and by extension, synergy. So it just so happens that it would go good with their studies anyways. At this point, the prologue has mostly been a lore dump, which isn't unheard of for JRPGs, especially for this era. At least you do get to enjoy some nice music, run into one of the cutest roadblocks in RPGs, and even get rewarded with some foreshadowing if you explore enough. But besides maybe introducing you to shops, the prologue takes a bit of a pause in terms of gameplay until we actually make it to Mount Aleph itself, where the game uses Solsecum to introduce us to the primary gameplay loop of Golden Sun. It is here where the game teaches you what to expect from dungeons, an assortment of mazes with puzzles and random battles sprinkled throughout, to add some spice to the navigation. The way Solsecum eases us into the gameplay loop of dungeons is one of the biggest reasons why it's important to experience this prologue in a first playthrough. You get to see synergy in action both in and outside of battle. Your spells are basic, but will easily overwhelm the enemies. You may even level up enough to see how you'll gradually gain new skills throughout your quests. Things that are easy to take for granted for the veteran RPG fan, but things that may help ease a newer player into the genre. Plus, the game has a system where your ability to use synergy automatically regenerates as you walk. This does help make the gameplay early on more forgiving, as you'll likely gain synergy as quickly as you use it. However, there's an even more vital purpose to this system. Synergy is used throughout the game to solve puzzles, and Solsecum does a great job teaching the player about puzzles within dungeons and how synergy fits into the equation. Starting with a basic type of puzzle that you've probably seen in RPGs before, find an item, and then place that item somewhere else. Then you're introduced to pushing around obstacles, a puzzle type you've probably seen in other dungeon crawlers before. Even if you've never played an RPG before, you're probably familiar with this concept from games like The Legend of Zelda. This is then repeated in a future room, but there's a catch. You know from past experience that you need to push these obstacles aside, but this time, said obstacles are out of reach. Right on cue, Crane comes out and clues you in on a major mechanic of Golden Sun's dungeon crawling. Some obstacles will require you to use the very skills you've been using in battle, outside of combat. With this in mind, you go into the synergy menu, assuming you haven't already, and look at your skills. The available skills you have at this point are very limited, making it apparent what you have to do. So, you find a synergy called Move and go, maybe this will work. Sure enough, this Move ability lets you push the obstacle out of the way and progress onwards. The puzzles build upon this knowledge to create more complex challenges as you go. Synergy puzzles may be new to many players, but the game cleverly eases you into this mechanic by starting you out with a spell that is more of an extension of your basic abilities, rather than something flat out new. As you complete the final exam of your abilities, you reach the very heart of the Solsecum. At this point, I feel I've properly illustrated how Solsecum acts as a tutorial dungeon and sets the stage for the rest of the adventure. Though, this does leave us with one major question. What's wrong with it? If this prologue has an exciting opening, followed by a dungeon that eases you into the core gameplay, all with fantastic music by the way, and it all opens up the door to the main conflict, wouldn't it be fine to play every time, even if it's a slow burn? For some people, yes, it is perfectly fine, and it's perfectly fine to enjoy the game that way. In fact, it's only to your benefit if you already enjoy it that way, because like in many RPGs, this first hour or so of the game is completely unskippable through normal means, even on repeat playthroughs. Even I enjoy a good listen to the Solsecum and Elemental Star themes now and then. But like I said early on, there's only so many times I could do these very basic puzzles and battles, when I know the game has so much more to it. Up to this point, the game plays very similarly to your average RPG, and I'm gonna guess this might be a source of some of the stories I hear about people who didn't get very far before giving up on the game. In an attempt to ease players into Golden Sun, as well as RPGs as a whole, players missed a key element that makes Golden Sun special. In a sense, I find a lot of parallels between how Golden Sun and Paper Mario handled their prologue. Both have a slow burn to ease you into the world, but deprive you of a key element of their gameplay in the process. Funny enough, I feel both games alleviate this issue in their own way. Paper Mario by letting you use action commands right away in the sequel, and The Lost Age by using the assumption you've played the previous game to abridge its prologue significantly. Let's dive into the ways I feel this portion of the game could have been done better. I feel what the game teaches the player is fine. However, I believe the key to improvement is finding ways to condense the material without compromising the narrative impact. The issue is that Golden Sun's opening's narrative is built with some caveats that prevent me from making the changes I feel would be most effective, at least without sacrificing key elements of the story. For example, I would love to either add on more to the Stormy night scene, such as some basic puzzles and a mini-boss fight, to introduce the player to synergy sooner. However, this scene is built on the fact that Isaac and Garrett were helpless due to a lack of synergy, and how they honed their skills only after 3 years of training motivated by this tragedy. Soul Sachem could act as the perfect natural tutorial for all of Golden Sun's elements if Jinnies were introduced within it. However, Jinnies only exist in the game because they were awakened from the disturbance of the elemental stars, which happens at the very end of the dungeon. It's much easier to just live and learn from the lessons of Golden Sun and implement them into a sequel, assuming we ever get a new Golden Sun game in the process. But for the fun of the video, let me give it a shot anyways. First of all, during the Stormy night, I think having Isaac's parents be more involved could be a way to incorporate synergy without compromising on the main party's arc. Instead of sending you off, they could join you as temporary party members, assisting you in clearing debris that would fall in the way. This would serve as a lesson on synergy as field magic, and any battles you get in along the way would serve as a tutorial for using synergy in battles. Once you reach Felix and his family, Isaac's parents would leave the party to resume their original roles. For bonus points, we could even have the man that joins you in the plaza to help Felix be a temporary party member, even if all he would have a chance to do is show off some more synergies in a couple additional battles. If we want to get the whole spectrum, this could be the perfect opportunity to showcase fire synergy, while Isaac's family would showcase earth. Flash forward 3 years later, and I can't think of too much to change until we reach Soul Sachem. There might be room to speed things up a little if we were somehow able to more quickly get to the various parts of town or condense the dialogue, but it's not too bad. In fact, you have a bit of control over how long this portion is, as going to the town plaza at this point is completely optional. Within Soul Sachem itself, I want to take advantage of the player already being familiar with synergy to accelerate the puzzle's complexity. Maybe take out the jewel puzzle or one of the mazes the game forces you through. This should give us more time to properly introduce one of the more controversial changes I'll make in this rewrite. While I understand Jinnies don't appear in Soul Sachem because, long story short, they don't exist yet, I feel the story could be rewritten to include them slightly earlier without compromising too much of the game's narrative. One possibility could be to have Flint be special. While other Jinns lie dormant in the heart of Soul Sachem, Flint could be a guardian to his midpoint. Events from 3 years ago could awaken him as it becomes apparent that Soul Sachem needs more security to keep intruders out. After Flint deems you worthy to pass, he would join your party directly, and jump between the 3 adepts throughout the rest of the dungeon. This would give you more opportunity to learn about Jinns through show rather than tell. There could even be a point where the game forces you to have Flint on a fire adept, so you can properly see how mixing Jinns can affect classes and spells. All of this would give you a chance to see how Jinns affect different adepts, and hopefully sow the seeds of curiosity to experiment more with them, as you collect more Jinns beyond the prologue. I've watched a small handful of blind playthroughs over the past few years. In the process, I've noticed people didn't even realize the complexities of mixing Jinns until someone pointed it out in chat or something similar. This may be a surprise to veteran fans, especially considering how long Flint spends explaining Jinn in his vanilla tutorial. But my theory is that players miss this detail with how wordy said tutorial is and how quickly he brushes past the part of mixing elements in this drawn out explanation. My hope is that by making players spend more time with the mechanic, rather than just being told about it, these details will better stick in the player's mind. Of course, when the adventure begins proper, Flint would permanently join you, with the hopes that you'll help him reunite with the scattered Djinns, now that the volcano has awakened them. I believe that covers everything I feel about Golden Sun's prologue, from what it does right, where I feel it falls apart, and how I would attempt to improve it. I may still prefer to jump straight into the action on repeat playthroughs, but that boils down to my personal taste I carry towards RPGs as a whole, rather than something Golden Sun specifically does wrong. That being said, even if you have the option to by outside means, I would still highly recommend playing through the prologue if you're playing Golden Sun for the first time. The highs are well worth the lows of it all, and if you do find the first couple hours of the game boring, I do urge you to still give it a chance, as I do strongly feel that even past the prologue, it can take a couple dungeons and you building a collection of Djinns to truly get a feel of what the series can offer. And if you're already hooked on this game by the time you leave Vale, then I got good news for you. The fun only goes up from here. Hey everyone, thanks for watching to the end of the video. If you liked the video, I do appreciate the likes, they boost my ego. And in theory, if you want to see more, hitting that subscribe button makes any upload that I do show up on your subscription feed. Not necessarily the home feed, but the subscription feed. And that'd probably be the most reliable way to know when I upload something new. Because your guess is as good as mine as to when I'll finish the next editorial. I've been trying to do them once per month, but it seems like life and the inability to make short scripts always get in the way. Yeah, I was just talking about the prologue of Golden Sun, so I could have sworn this would have been like maybe a 10-15 minute video. Sure didn't end up that way. For now, let's just say they'll be ready when they're ready. I want to do them on the side. Maybe trying to do them consistently is not the best idea. I'm still experimenting with this overall concept a little bit. So I'll probably just update you all once I've played around with a few more ideas and have a general idea of where to go. But yeah, these editorials take time, so I do appreciate the patience. Plus, it's not like I'm uploading nothing in between editorial videos. Currently working through a mod of Pokemon XD called Pokemon XG Next Gen. It's been a real fun blast, especially for a Pokemon XD fan like myself. And I'm still working through the Lost Age randomizer. We're getting close to the end, either because I run out of patience with all the roadblocks we run into, or we actually reach the end of the game, but I imagine by the time next month rolls around, we'll at least be close to the end, if not at the end. But I do like Golden Sun, so I'm sure I'll find an excuse to play more of these games in some shape or matter. For example, I'm still working on making my own mod, or at least a version 2 of it. I've been meaning to make more videos showcasing version 2 differences of Golden Sun, Dawn, and Djinn for forever now. I just keep getting busy or sidetracked, trying to keep up with everything else I want to do for YouTube. It's just been a rough start to 2024. December I was sick, January wasn't great, so it's hard to keep up with anything, let alone things I wasn't already working on, like videos for Dawn and Djinn. Because I'm real happy with the progress I've been making on it, just it's a matter of finding a time to actually show it off. But so far I'm getting caught back up with the rest of the YouTube backlog, so don't want to promise anything this far in advance, but this is the back of my mind of things I want to do. So thank you all again for tuning in, especially if you sat through all my rambling. Whether it be to the channel in general, or for the next editorial, I hope to see you all later. Take care.